Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Again, this is Wim Misery from Stylelabs. Welcome in the M Project webinar. I will first share some slides around the concept of M Project and very high level quickly the Marketing Content Hub before we will start the demo itself. So the Marketing Content Hub, some of you might be familiar with this slide. The Marketing Content Hub is basically a software component or software meant for marketing content, of course, which will aggregate data from upstream systems like, for example, ERP or PLM, MRM systems, etc., and which can connect to all of your downstream systems like e-commerce sites, CMS sites, etc. We have a couple of, let's say, layers in the Marketing Content Hub, which you see in the middle of the drawing of the slides. There's the black circle, which is basically your database structure, which holds all of the files and metadata, for example, also product copy. Then there's the red circle, where this demo is about today. Which is all about creative project management and collaboration tools. So because final content, approved content, doesn't fall from the sky, so there's need to be streamlined processes in order to decently create this content. And then the third layer is like the brand portal, which is basically a CMS on top of the application, which allows you as a marketing team to communicate with the marketing community. For example, could be CMS pages around brand guidelines, for example. So that's the high-level picture of the Marketing Content Hub. All of or more information of the Marketing Content Hub can be found on our website, stylelabs.com or marketingcontenthub.com. Where you also have the ability to request a book about the software. So let's dive into the M project. So the component about project management and workflow. In order to have a bit understanding of around the concepts, I will first share this two slides where I will explain the key components of the workflow component. So what do we see in this picture on the slide? We have three very important components of the M project area, which is the block object, which is basically representing a workflow, or could also be used to structure workflows. So it has, let's say, two main purposes: structuring flow and the flow itself. We'll see later on how this works in reality. Then we have in the middle the gray circle, which is something we call a stage, and this is basically something which can be attached to a workflow. So on a workflow, project managers or people working with the system can define themselves on the fly a number of relevant stages or milestones, a milestone of a certain workflow. And then the last key component is the task component. Of course, a workflow system can't, let's say, live without the concept of a task, which basically allows users to assign tasks to execute certain things like uploads of files, approval of files, editing copy of products, etc. So those are the key components of the workflow itself. And then there's the last component, which is basically like an object from the database itself. So I mentioned in the beginning that the most important part of the Marketing Content Hub is the database structure itself, where the final content resides. This final content is the part who needs to be created, approved, etc., etc. So any kind of entity, like for example an asset, an image, or a product, could be actually linked to a workflow, and via the workflow basically be completed. So there are several possibilities here. An example flow, we see, or we most probably recognize the block entities, the block components. So we have a campaign block, we have on a second level a project block. So like I mentioned at the beginning, the structures. So you can use them for structuring workflow. And then you have the workflow itself, the job blocks. And each of those blocks can have or the same or other stages. So for example, in this this block we see, the job, we see that it comes with 5 stages, and currently we are in the 4th stage, the 4th milestone. Each of those stages can hold tasks. So for example, edit, copy, upload files, depending on your workflow. So let's put this in practice. In order to demo the components, I will walk through 3 different workflows. First of all, I will start with the product photo shoot. So imagine there's a product, a new product created in a company, and pictures need to, or images need to be created, front view, left view, different kind of images. The process behind how to upload them, how to approve them, how to make them final. So this is the idea of the first workflow. The second workflow is about creating and approving product copy. So descriptions, why buys, benefits, this kind of stuff. And then the last flow is about using this final content which is created in those first 2 flows, using this in creative processes, like for example Indesign files, which are about products and images which are basically now final because of those first 2 flows, and creative people would like to use those images and or copy inside flyers, for example. That's all about the third flow. So let's get started. Maybe I didn't mention the type of users. You will see that I will be using several type of users in the flow. So typically the flow itself, the workflow itself, will be kicked off by a project manager, and then depending on the flow, certain other users will also be part of the flow. So let's switch to the demo environment. So I will start logging on with the administrator account, which is like the, let's say, the project manager. He plays the role of the project manager. When you enter our system, you get onto a home page, which is like a dashboard with several shortcuts to areas in the application. We see a number of items in our menu. The project component is behind the projects link. If I go to the home area of the project link, I'm really in the area where all of the, let's say, work in progress is managed and structured. So what do we see here? We see on the left hand the running projects, so the running workflows, or the folders in which they are structured. Remember, I will quickly switch back to the slides. Remember those levels, those different levels. We now see, let's say, the root level over here in this view. So if I would just open one of the virtual folders, you will see that we will find sub-blocks or workflows within one folder. What else is interesting to see is there's another view to show all of the workflows by selecting the charts, which is basically dividing the workflows into certain chart views, and they are for each of the statuses we have like a chart, like the one for not started, the active workflows, and the ones which are overdue. So by doing this, we have insight on the statuses of the different workflows. On the right hand, we see tasks which are not relevant right now for this users. You'll see later on for which it's useful. So I'll start with the first flow, which is about the photoshoot. So I'll go to the photoshoot virtual folders. What do we see here? We see let's say the current workflows in this folder. We see there's right now 3 running flows. For each of the flows, we see that there's certain stages: draft shoot, lightbox review, agency cleanup, finalize. Second flow is right now in the stage finalize. Second flow is in stage lightbox review. You can also see this in the right hand of the screen. There's a percentage done, which is basically percentagely wise giving you an impression of where you are in the flow. There is a timeline, which is actually showing a Gantt chart view of all of the running projects. So which is also indicating or could be helping to indicate whether or not certain flows are late. So there's the today vertical line, and then for each of those, for each of the flows we have here a row in the Gantt chart. Yes. So I will start creating a new flow right now, and I can do this. I can do this in 2 different ways. I can or start from scratch, which would mean that I would need to identify the different milestones, etc., etc., some other things as well. Or second option is I can use the concept of a template, and a template is basically predefining certain things on a workflow which you would always reuse. Like for example, the stages. If for each of the flows in the workflows application, you could upfront define the number of or the relevant stages on the template, and then when you create an instance, let's say, of the flow, we will get this from the template. So I select the photoshoot template and hit the create button. We have a let's say a blank workflow started. First thing I will do is I will change the name of the workflow, and I will call it demo product. So it's a workflow about a product, demo product. So what are the capabilities right now, or what else do we see in the flow itself? There is 2 very important tabs here in the workflow, which is brief and deliverables. Brief is everything which a project manager can use in order to brief the people working on the workflow, like the photographers, the approvers, to brief them about the workflow. And several things can be briefed. There could be just like a textual description. This is the briefing, and we can put this, we have rich text over here, so we can use bullet points, etc., etc. So then it shows up over here. Something else which can be done is just uploading PDF or Word files, which kind of contain general guidelines on certain workflows, which you would or you might need to add over and over again. So the reason why it immediately shows up over here is because it was linked to my templates. So the template, on the template of the photoshoot workflow, I have attached this Word document, because for each photoshoot workflow it makes sense. And then another way another way of a briefing could be assigning the product about which struggling over my words, about which product this flow is about. So if I hit this add products button, I get an overview of the unfinished or the non-final products in the system which, for example, came from ERP. So I can attach them. I can attach them to the brief area in order to for the photographers to have full information about which product the photo shoot is about. The fact, for example, that we do see already here a picture is because this is just a low-res picture to have at least a visual in the application. So this is not yet the final images of the product. So now we are ready to actually kick off the flow itself. Kickoff or the start of the flow can happen or manual, or this can also be automated, depending on the rules. So right now I will do this manual. And so by kicking off the workflow, I will enable, let's say, the first stage in the workflow, which is the draft shoot. So, and in this stage, I will, for this stage, I will create a task for the photographer user, an agency, for example, to upload the resulting files of his photo shoot. So I will select an upload files task. As you can see, there's several type of tasks. We'll see other examples of tasks later on in the demo. So I select upload files. I can assign a certain priority. For example, this is very urgent, it's critical. And for example, I expect this to happen at least by next week, Tuesday. I also have to apply a message. Please do photo shoots and upload files. A task, of course, needs to be assigned to someone or to a group of people. So we support both options. We can or assign it to an individual user or to a group of users. In this case, I will just assign it to one user. In the next workflow, we'll see how assigning to user groups work. Then we have options around notification, email notifications when tasks are created. Pretty straightforward. So then I hit the send button. So right now, as a project manager, I have created the task and I've sent it to the agency users. So right now I will switch from browsers. I will switch to a browser where I will log on with the agency users to which I have assigned the upload files task. When I log on here, I have the same view as the project manager. We can of course secure this, so he only has like very limited permissions in the system to, for example, only able to upload files and not doing anything else. For this user, in order to see his to-do, he can go to the work page. So on the work page, he basically has an inbox on the left hand. So this is tasks which were assigned from other users to him. There's also an out box, and this is relevant for people who are creating tasks and assigning them to someone else. So if I would quickly switch to the work page of the project manager, we'll see that the project manager has quite some tasks in his outbox because he sent the task out to someone else. So that's the difference, inbox, outbox. We see the level, the priority level. We can filter on tasks. So for example, to only show tasks which are not started, I can show all tasks of all statuses. So if I select the task as the agency user, first thing I can do is accept the task, which is basically setting the status of the task from not started to started. So at least the project manager knows that the agency guy read, let's say, his email notification and that he started working on it. So let's accept my task. But after accepting, I get a panel where I can drag and drop the resulting photoshoot files. Of course, as the photographer, I would first read the brief tab. Remember what we've added in the brief tab. We've set a certain description. We have attached a product. So we, as a photographer, I know about which product this flow is about. I have my general guidelines. I can download this information, so I can use this information to basically do my job. Imagine now that the photographer went to his photo studio and created took the photos, and he has stored them somewhere on his local machine or on certain share. Doesn't matter. And those are the pictures he has taken. So it's all about wine in this demo. So what he does is he selects the files and he drags and drops them onto this placeholders in the UI. We see that those for all of those files we will create assets in our system. After a couple of seconds we will see that a thumbnail will appear, but the system requires a couple of seconds to generate them. I will write some feedback to the project managers. Job done, check attached files. There we go. So as an agency user I have executed my job. So now it's back to the project manager. So I will again switch from window. So I go from the agency user back to the administrator, the project manager. I can find my flow back by going to my virtual folders. Here's my demo product. Let's change the source orders. Here's my demo product. I can also search for it. Imagine that there would be a heavy amount of items in your virtual folders. And if I open it, and if I would go as a project manager to the deliverables tab, I will find the 5 assets which were uploaded by the agency. They all have a status new. So that's where we are right now. In the meanwhile, I would also, as a project manager, be able to check the activity of the workflow and see everything which happens. So we see, for example, I changed the name, a block was activated, files were uploaded, agency user has finished the task, etc., etc. So all actions happening are tracked. So next phase could be to approve the the assets which were uploaded by an approver user. So because we passed the let's say the shoot phase, I will put the workflow into its next stage, the lightbox review, where we will review the uploaded images. I will do this again by creating a task. So I will select all of the items I would want the approver to review. I could, for example, decide that certain assets are even not, let's say, relevant to be reviewed. So then I don't check the one I don't want to have in the review. I create a task and select the review, the final review type, demo message. There we go again. I select the users. I will use the user Tom, which is like the art director in this company. And I just create a task. There we go. I will again switch to my other browser, log out with the agency user and log in with the art director user called Tom. I will also go to the work area to see the tasks for Tom. We see we have a final review task. If I open the task, I again can click accept. And just for you to see the, let's say from a project manager point of view, before I will click accept, I will quickly go to the resource planning. So imagine that it took a while before Tom did something. I can, using the resource planning page, search for all users which are part of those processes, search for them and get insights on how many tasks they have open. If I select a certain user, I can also get, for example, info about which tasks are assigned to this user and filter on their state. So for example, I as a project manager can see that there's one task for Tom which he didn't start it so far. Yes. So when I will hit accept, this will basically behind the scenes trigger that the task starts. And then I can do several things as a reviewer. I can, or based on this view, approve or reject. I can do some annotations on it. If I need to visually identify what I like to explain or what I don't like about the pictures. So I can make annotations like this. And then I can basically, for each of the assets, approve them or reject them. Add a reason for rejection. Don't like blah blah something. I can also mark it for rework, so I don't totally disagree, I don't totally agree, but I'd like to create a new version. And let's also approve the last one, because you're quite positive people. So I did my thing as the art director. I hit I'm done. And again, if I now switch back to the project from a project manager point of view, you will see that depending on what I've done as the art director, you will see that I have a status approved, rework, rejected. So another step in this flow could be to create a task and assign to the photographer to rework this file, so to upload a new version. I won't do this in this demo because it would bring us a bit too far. The last thing I'd like to show in this flow is the following. So imagine we've passed all of the necessary steps and all of the assets which required, let's say, an approved state have their approved states. By using this filtering mechanism on the left hand, I can easily see all of the approved assets, because imagine that there's hundreds of assets over here. It might be very interesting to use those filters. So next thing could be to basically send those assets to the DOM area, to the public area. And so doing this will basically bring them there and make them final and public for later use. That's it about the first workflow. If there would be any questions in the meanwhile, please throw them in the chat. I will now start with the second workflow, the product copy writing. So what's the idea behind this? Imagine that you have a upstream integration with ERP, from which the system, let's say, receives all new products. Those products will be upstream from ERP to or could be upstream to an area in the application where they're kind of under review. Actually, I would need to log in with my product manager account, because this is a typical use case for a product manager. So I will see exactly the same, but just to make it clear. So as a product manager, I would see which products or SKUs came in from ERP. They would have a, let's say, a default status. They wouldn't have copy. We have right now 2 products from ERP, and then from this area I can actually trigger a workflow, kick off a workflow, which will streamline the process of adding the copy to the product, and then afterwards allow product managers to approve the copy. So let's do it. So let's hit this button for this particular product. So what happens behind the scenes? In contrast with the previous workflow, where I manually created the workflow and manually created tasks, for this workflow the system automatically kicked off the flow and automatically already created tasks. So as the project manager, let's quickly have a look of in the project area, and what we can see. There's a virtual folder for new products. And there is this is the new flow. So there were already other flows for other products which have we are kind of right now in progress. So there's a new one over here. No, sorry, this one is finished. I'm wrong. So this is my new flow. And if I will open this as a project manager, and if I have a look at the tasks, what do we see? We see that there's immediately by the system, by the rules in the system, a task, an edit content task, created and assigned to a group of people, which are the copywriters. So the first one of the copywriters who logs onto the system and grabs the task will, let's say, be able to do the job. So they don't do it together. It's the first one who takes the task who will execute it. So I will now log on with an copywriter account. There we go. I go to my work area. In the meanwhile, we know our work area. So in my inbox, I do have this edit content task, where the message says, please provide copy for. If I open the task, I can, just like in previous task, I can accept the task. And then if I have a look in the brief area, I will see that the product on which I would need to add copy is automatically also linked in the brief area. So this also happens automatically based on the rules in the system. And if I open this as a copywriter, I get into a detail page of a product. A detail page which allows me to change, for example, the name, if this would be relevant, add a description, add some Romance copy. So I will quickly, let's say, cheat and take some copy from my notes, because I'm not that creative. So I add the copy into the description box, and I save the data. And then another type of, or another way of adding copy could be by adding why-buys. For example, you should buy this bottle of wine because it really has a strong taste, or goes perfectly with meat, like this. Okay, so I've done my job as a copywriter, and go back to the workflow, and then I hit I'm done. Please check the copy. Done. This is optional, this piece of text. So, and when the copywriter user clicks I'm done, again the system will also be triggered to create a annotation task for the product manager, so the one who is responsible for validating the content. So it will create such a task automatically for him to check basically the results. So I will switch back to the other users, the product manager users, and I will go to the deliverables area. And what do we see in the deliverables area? In the deliverables area we have, I will quickly open a new tab, the same product page itself, which is where the copywriters added the data. But we see something else as well. There's also a PDF attached. A PDF attached to the workflow, which is basically for the product manager an easy way to annotate on the product copy. So using this annotation tool, he can not only select like with images certain areas of the PDF, but he can also really select pieces of text on which he'd like to annotate or comment for the copywriters. Please improve this sentence. Can also just draw rectangles, just like we have seen for images. So product manager makes the annotations, and yeah, actually he was even able to work on the task before he accepts that this is possible. So when he's done, he clicks I'm done, which is or let's say assume that this is a flow where there weren't annotations or there weren't comments. So if you would in the meanwhile have a look to our area where the workflow was started, then we see that we right now have one product which still has no copy, and then the one on which we were working right now, which is providing copy. So if I select those facets or filters, you'll see that the ones appear. So if as a product manager I have reviewed the content, let's say we ran through several iterations of adding the copy and improving the copy, And then finally, the last step for the product manager could be to basically approve approve the product by setting the status to copy provided, which will also update the product over here in the review area. And it doesn't. Did I? Quickly redo. Okay, yeah, small problem. Anyway, believe me, the status would be, or would be, oh no, there is copy provided, I'm just overlooking. It works. So, and then this product could be sent to the public area to make it available for everyone. So that's the second example. Please also note that this is an example flow. So the different steps we show here can be in your use case different. It's just an example of steps. And then last flow is the Indesign layouting flow, which is basically a workflow where we would use the images which were approved in the product photo shoot and the copy of the product which was approved in the product copy writing flow to use this final content in, for example, an Indesign creative layout. So in order to demonstrate this flow, I will again start on the home page, and I will kick off the workflow again with my project manager account. As we can see, there's also a layout virtual folder here. If I open the layout virtual folders, we see that we have two running or one finished layout. You see it's 100%, and another one for Easter, which is 12%. I will create a new layout workflow in a similar way as I did it for the photo shoots. I use a template for it because I have predefined some stuff on the templates. If I create the flow, we see again that the stages are grayed out because the flow didn't start yet. So I will first of all again change the name. Let's call it Spring Flyers 2016. And in the just like with the photo shoots, we have a brief and a deliverable stop. And in brief, we can also here link and add anything which is relevant for this particular process. So what could be relevant for this process? We could, or we would want to have the assets here, which would need to be used in the flyers. We would, or we might want to add textual content, which we want the creative guide to be used in the flyers or to use in the flyers. We could, for example, link products or product copy, because imagine that the flyer is about certain products. We would want to, or we might want to link this product copy in the brief area. So there are several things we might want to do. So let's start with the first thing. So I mentioned that this flyer would reuse or would use the final images from the flow the photoshoot workflow, which we created as the first part of the demo. So in order to reuse those images, I will go to my my demo product photoshoot. And what I will do is the following. I will filter on approved. I will first of all clear my selection. I will filter on approved images. I will select them, and then I will switch back to my other flow, to my layouts. And go to the flow. And here I will paste those images from selection, meaning so I am actually reusing the assets which were uploaded, reviewed, approved in another workflow. I will paste them here in the brief area, because I don't want to download them and re-upload them in this workflow. So I just reuse them from another location. So that's the first thing I do. And other thing I'd like to do is, for example, select the products from which I'd like to use product copy or product images. So I select 2 of them. So this flyer will be talking about those wines. It will be talking about the description and the white bias of the wines. And then the last thing I will add would be what we call text fragment. And a text fragment is just a piece of text which is not necessarily linked to or tied to a certain product. It's not a product description, but it's, for example, a quote which would need to be used in the flyers. So please try out those good wines during spring. Yes, so this is not product copy, this is just copy which you would want to brief to the creative users to be used in the in his Indesign, in his creative Indesign file. So I've everything ready. I actually forgotten to start my brief stage, which is relevant for timelines, can be kicked off automatically. So right now I could assign a task to a creative user, and I will just do a to-do. Please use the information in the brief area as the info for the flyers. I'll again use user Tom. Tom became now a creative guy. And I sent a task to him. So I again switch from browser, log in now with the other user again. And go to the to the work area. Didn't I? And demo project on. Where is? So okay, here's my task. Okay, I check I have done. I will execute the task. And then what I now can do is I can download all of this information to be used in my Indesign file. So instead of manually downloading all of the assets one by one and copy pasting the product information from the system by just using copy paste, I can download them as a let's say as a package by doing this, which basically results in a download link. There we go. So, and what do we have in this zip package? We have basically our images, and then a certain XML file. So I will now go to a folder structure where I have an Indesign template prepared. I will paste the information, so the zip which I have downloaded, so the images together with the copy into this folder. I will open the template. So as you can see, it comes with some boxes where images and text would need to get. I do the following. There we go. And then we are basically able to drag and drop information, so copy, and images from this structure. So it's the XML basically contains copy from the products, titles from the products, images from the products, etc. So if I drag and drop this into a certain box, you see that the text from the product gets in the box. I can do the same with product description, and also every description goes perfectly in the box. So the creative user doesn't manually need to copy paste the box from an email or the text from an email or from our system. It immediately gets there by easily doing a drag and drop. So that's for text purposes. There's also possibilities to drag and drop images. For example, by doing this, I can place images like this. So those are the images from the photo shoot, which are those two guys. But there's also the images which were already attached to the product, can also be added to the workflow. To the Indesign, to the layouts. So the purpose of this Indesign integration is basically to lower the effort to have up-to-date content, which is in your marketing content hub, to use this up-to-date content in an Indesign file. So it's not creating the layout for you, it's just providing you with an easy process to have the up-to-date content in design, so that creative people don't need to take care about the up-to-date data. And then finally, this Indesign file could be back uploaded into the system just like any other image, and then be approved, annotated, etc., etc., etc. So that was the last part of the demo. We have a couple of minutes to go. If there's any questions, I would be happy to answer them right now. They can be added in the chat. Okay, so no questions. Then I would like to thank you for attending. I do get a question from Frank in the first demo. It shows you annotated an image after approving it. No, I first uploaded. We first uploaded the image, then we annotated the image, and then we approved them. So it was in that order. but let's say the different steps in the system, or the order of the steps are very flexible. The system is actually not let's say avoiding certain orders of tasks. So it's really up to the project managers to define the correct order, because we also know that there's in creative processes exceptions, and that it's not always possible to make the system drive the order of the steps. So there's the balance between what is driven by the system and what is driven by the project managers. It's a good balance you need to find when you're designing those workflows. Okay, so thanks everyone again, and hope to hear or see you soon in another webinar. Bye.